Hello everyone, I'm Sam Fritz, the Director of EdTech and AI at Solution Tree, and I'm excited to be moderating this new podcast series called From Foundation to Future, PLCs and AI in Education. This series is recorded live on site at one of our PLC Institutes to give you fresh ideas, authentic voices, and inspiration for educators at every stage of their journey. So join me as I talk with keynoters, presenters, and attendees to learn from their successes and their challenges. All right, so my next guest is Dr. Jason Williams. Jason, thank you for joining me live here in Seattle. It's great to talk with you. So Jason, you are K-8. You've had all kinds of experience, right? Teacher, coach, administrator.
Yeah. So started as a 7th grade science teacher in a little district where I was the only 7th grade science teacher in the entire district.
Oh, wow.
And
talk about a singleton, right?
Yeah, and what was really cool about that is no student was ever pulled out of my class. So students with IEPs, students that were English learners, everybody had Mr. Williams for science, which is really, really cool. Became a technology coach after that in an elementary school where really supported the use of technology, the integration when one-to-one initiatives were becoming a hot thing. And then had the opportunity to go to another district and work in their central office as a curriculum coordinator where I supported curricular initiatives K through 8, became an assistant principal during the pandemic. And then, baptism by fire. It was a lot of fun. And then wound back up at the central office too, in a K-8 district.
You're an author as well. You specialize in data and assessment?
Yeah. So I just wrote my first book. It is coming out in October. It's called Shared Data, Shared Decisions. And it really focuses on the intersection between data practices and school culture and looks at how our data analysis, our assessment, and our response to data really are reflective of our culture. And so how do we have a sustainable and healthy data culture?
Yeah. And on top of all of that, you're also kind of an expert in teacher-facing AI tools. I'm like, you're leading some initiatives.
Expert, strong
AI.
word. I think, lead learner maybe would more appropriate.
I love that. Everyone I've talked to about this has got the same kind of response. Like, I don't know that I'm an expert, but I'm definitely a lead learner. I'm learning as I'm going.
Yeah, well, honestly, Sam, I think that's probably because it changes so fast. Yeah. Even, I was giving a session on AI today, and just last week, ChatGPT started releasing the study mode. Right. And that became the hot new thing. Yeah. And it was like, all right, well, what's this? And so it's in a technology that is evolving faster than already fast evolving technology has in the past, right. Which is exciting, scary, all of that. But it's also hard to, I think, consider yourself to be an expert because you might be an expert on a particular feature or a particular approach, but it might change next month.
Yeah, absolutely right. Great. So we're going to talk a little bit about AI. So when you started, I'm going to make this leap, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but as a technology teacher, coach, technology is a tool that you use. Do you view AI kind of in the same way, that it's a tool to be used, not necessarily the thing? Yeah.
I'll harken back to my technology coach days. So we were going one-to-one iPads. And remember, I had teachers that were coming to me of, hey, I want to use the iPads in my classroom. And usually I would start with a question, well, why? It was like, well, we spend all this money and we're kind of supposed to. It's like, but why? Why do you want to use the iPads? What are you hoping to do with them? And we always pushed our teachers, like, don't start with the app, start with the learning. And so a lot of times I would ask, like, well, what is the best way you know how to teach whatever the skill is that you want to use the technology for? And then we would utilize the technology to enhance or leverage that learning. AI is the same way. So it's really thinking of not so much like, oh, well, I want to use AI, I should use AI because everybody's doing it. Right. It's, well, what are we trying to accomplish? If I use AI, what is going to be enhanced? What's going to be made more efficient? What possibilities does it open up? But I think it's also important to consider some of the limitations or the trade-offs of having AI do that for you.
I think about, I was a technology coach myself. Okay. And so one of the things I would talk about is versatility of the tool. So if you give a kid a pencil, they can do a lot in your classroom with a pencil. So what's the pencil version of the of the technology tool, right? So what's the most versatile that you can use in the most ways, and you can figure out all kinds of crazy stuff to do with that one tool. And that's how I see AI as well. Is it can be a pencil, it can be versatile, but and you talk a lot too about. I saw your session today too, and you talk about choosing the right model that you don't make any statements about this is the best one. You're like, pick the one that is best for you. Why that way?
Yeah, I think because it's a tool that is versatile, like you're talking about, I think it's important for folks when they're starting to use AI to really be reflective and think about, well, what's the best way I learn? Or what's my approach to this? Because rather than boxing yourself in to, well, this is how I should be using AI, explore how it can enhance the process that you're already doing, because you don't want to adapt to AI, you want AI to adapt to you. In the session, it was really interesting. So I provided some examples of how I have used, some of these chatbots, and I had, people asking me about like, well, I think I can use voice mode. Like, I think it'll talk to me and I can talk to it. And I was like, yeah, I know it can. That's not how I use it, but I know I have colleagues where they have it on their phone and they much prefer to have a conversation with the chatbot than type things in and have the archive of the written chat. So it's I encourage them. I was like, if that works for you, use it that way, because you want it to be the tool that's going to add the efficiency and the value to your work. You don't want it to be this thing that changes your approach to something that maybe isn't something you're as comfortable with, or you're fighting the process now.
Yeah, great. And I know that kind of continuing along that line, not too long ago, it was essential to write a quality prompt to get a quality output. And that's less so, but you really approach it from that standpoint of let's give it everything it needs to give you a quality output on the first try, right? And why do it that way?
So I think one of the opportunities we have with using AI chatbots is we can kind of really leverage the idea that they're a technology, not a human. So in the one sense, we want to communicate it like a human. So that way, that's what we're used to. It gives us communication back that's human-like. But it can hold on to so much more information from the outset, so we can get a response more efficiently. So if you and I had a conversation around unpacking standards, if all I gave you was the prompt of like, hey, I want you to unpack this English standard, your first question would be, well, what standard do you want to unpack? So I at least have to give you that. Well, then if I give you the English standard, the way you unpack it and organize that information might not be the way that I want it. So then once you start doing it, I might then have to say, well, I want you to do it in this way. Can you organize the information so I can have it in this format? But if I front-loaded all of that with a human, if I said, hey, I want you to unpack this standard, here's the standard, give it to me in this format. Also, here's the other context that I want you. By the way, can you pretend like you're a special education teacher that's an expert in universal design for learning while you do this? Like, you'd be like, wait a second, what's the standard and what do you want me to do with it? An AI chatbot can hold on to all of that. And so I think the more context, the more detail you can give it from the outset, the better response you get from the get-go. You might still have to do some refining, but I think if you provide that information, then you don't have this huge chat log that you have to scroll through to get to the quality nugget that you want.
Right. And along that line too, you also mentioned the idea of deciding whether or not you're talking to it about process or product. So you're pretty clear about that too. Like, are you using this as a process efficiency or a product efficiency creator almost, right? Talk a little bit about that.
So I think, one of the terms that I encountered recently, I think John Spencer was where I got it. He talks about cognitive atrophy and the worry of cognitive atrophy. And so are our brains going to get weak because we're not engaging in as deep of thinking? So when we use AI, we really need to be cognizant of what we're handing over to AI. What experience are we now losing? If I am just looking for a principles message to put on my website to welcome people back, I might throw that into ChatGPT to give me a draft of it that I can customize. Or if I'm using it to create 10 examples of multiple choice questions aligned to a particular standard, so I can create an item bank and then I can spend time selecting the quality ones. Those are using AI to create a product, right? If I use it to replicate a process, so unpack a standard, create a proficiency scale, identify potential intervention strategies for students that haven't mastered yet. If I do that, then the question becomes, how am I going to still have that conversation with my team using that information from AI? So I always encourage teams to treat AI like an additional team member. So if AI gives you an idea and brings it to the team, just like if I were a team member and I brought an idea to the table, we probably would have a discussion about whether we want to use that, whether it meets our needs. We would come to consensus on some of those things. So there's efficiencies that can be added to the process, but we do need to be really careful about just handing over processes to an AI tool if the process itself is where the value is.
Right. I think people say thought partner, but they mean, they don't really mean partner.
Sure.
Right. And so you're really talking about that idea of it. We have a discussion, the AI, you and the AI, or you and the team and the AI, and it's a member of your team, but it's not the deciding factor, right? It's one part.
And even in a process like brainstorming, if we were on a team and we were brainstorming strategies, we can all engage in that process and brainstorm. But while we're brainstorming, we can also have an AI chatbot brainstorm the same idea or the same question, same types of ideas that we're trying to brainstorm, because we only know what we know.
Right.
And so there might be some things that we wouldn't otherwise consider that it suggests. So it's not, well, instead of us brainstorming strategies, let's just see what AI spits out. No, let's still brainstorm, but let's bring AI into the brainstorm. So that way our brainstorm is even wider and more valuable.
Yeah. Love that idea. I think too, we talked about this just before we started here, the idea that you like to kind of give it all the parameters, get the output, and then you're talking about refinement at the end. And that leads me to, so this is kind of a two-parter here, right? So we refine at the end after we get everything, but you talked a lot about and you mentioned it earlier already, but it's the thinking about it. It's the doing part that we have to still do as the human. So talk to me a little bit about why wait till the end to refine, and then is that where you're infusing that idea of, I'm still the human in this equation here?
I mean, I think I like to do it that way just because I tend to be a big picture person.
Yeah.
So I want to have the end in mind. I want to know where we're going. I want to know the destination, and then have as much information as possible to get me to that destination. So I might use a series of prompts or front load a prompt to do multiple things. So that way I have all of that information and then I can refine it afterwards. I know some people that refine it as they go. They're like, I want to look at one aspect at a time because that's how they think. It kind of goes back to using AI as that versatile tool and making it adapt to your style. So I would argue like front loading all the information or getting all the information before you refine isn't the quote unquote right way to use AI. I've just found it to be helpful because then I can kind of see almost it allows me to look at the chatbot's work. So like, just like we ask students to show their work when they're solving a math problem, it is sometimes helpful for me to see an example process from start to end. And then I can refine the parts of the process throughout. Yeah. Whereas if I start refining the process after, say, step one, or after, just little parts of it, when I get to the end, if it isn't what I want, well, is it because I refined too early? Is it because I pulled it off the path, in a wrong direction? So I kind of like to see the whole shebang. Yeah.
I'm the same way, but I think it's just interesting as to why you choose that. That's what I want. So I think the point is, whether you're refining early or later, refinement is an important part of using an AI assistant, and the human should be doing that part of it.
Yes.
I think you can brainstorm with an assistant, and then it's trying to give you, remembering that for everybody listening, it's trying to give you what you want, right? So at some point you can just say, I don't want this anymore, I want something else. It's not going to be offended. It's going to just change course.
Yeah, well, and just like, if a teammate brings an idea, at a minimum, our refinement is probably going to I'm going to make sure I understand what you're saying. I'm going to make sure I understand the idea that you bring. Or you bring an idea and then our conversation turns, okay, so how is this then going to look in the classroom? What are our next steps? So even during in-person communication, there's always refinement. And so it might be helpful for folks to think about their communication style when sharing ideas with their collaborative team. When they communicate, is it easier for them to kind of get the big picture and then refine the thinking along the way, or clarify the pieces so that way they understand? Or do they kind of go piece by piece when they're going through a process with their team?
Do you remember starting this? Do you remember when you started prompting an AI LLM and what do you remember what you asked it first?
So, I think I was doing some summer writing with an ELA team. And one of the things we were working on was, how can we adapt texts to be accessible to learners who are not at grade level reading yet? So it was, how do we expose kids to grade level text? We had lots of resources for grade level text. So we had ample ways to expose them and to instruct them with grade level text. But we didn't have as much quality text that would be of appropriate content for students that were reading below grade level. So I think my first prompt was actually, I put in a short article on how Pixar makes movies, and I wanted it at a lower Lexile level. And I wanted to see what it wrote. And I remember doing it with a team of teachers, and we were just like, oh my gosh, this is pretty cool. I think we were probably just impressed with how fast it could do it versus, us trying to modify a text or find a replacement. So I think we started to view it as a big time saver, or like a resource generator of, if I can't find this resource anywhere else, maybe I can create it. So I think that's where I started with it.
And then do you remember when it kind of blew your mind? Like when you did something that you were like, oh man, this is going to change things forever for me.
I think I had one of my coaches that showed me how she used it more conversationally. So I remember I think she was using it to create like a writing sample that would be representative of a 7th grade student. So that way, like, teachers could have exemplars in their classroom that then students could hold up the rubric and provide feedback as a way for them to kind of understand expectations and have examples. And so I remember her generating that writing sample, but then just seeing her refining questions, or seeing her like, okay, can you now give me another example of a 7th grader, but who is not meeting this portion of the rubric, and just seeing how it could adapt. I think that blew my mind on how versatile it could be, and not just, because I was used to, I think I viewed it more as like an input-output machine. Like, hey, do this thing, and then it says, okay, and then it gives you an example of a thing. But then when I saw her, like, it made a thing, and then just like kept refining it, and then like you could ask it questions and it could clarify things. And I was like, all right, now I see this as being valuable for our processes, for just our tasks as professionals across all sorts of things. Because I think I just saw it as like a content generator to start. And then when I saw how versatile it could be, and just the way that not only can we refine our prompts, but how we can use it to refine our thinking and our processes, I was like, okay, this has some power behind it.
Yeah. And I'm, we talked again before we started this podcast, and I have a similar take on this, but just curious, you borrow from other people. You learn from other colleagues, right? Is that something we should all be doing? I mean, that's why you're giving a session here, right?
Yeah. 100%.
Here's some stuff. Take it and run with it.
I have to shout out Bill Ferreter. He is probably the most generous educational professional I have ever met. He's always willing for people to use his stuff, and I love the caveat he always says, like, he'll share his stuff, and he says, and if you have figured out a way to improve this, please send it my way, because I want to continue getting better. And so I really try to embody that. So first, I'm very grateful for all the stuff that he shared, because he has really accelerated my learning with AI. But I think it also models sort of how we want to learn AI and also use AI. Is like, yeah, we can take improved prompts. Oh, you figured out how to do this approach? That sounds great. And then it might refine our approach. I might generate something with AI that is something that somebody never even thought of. Right. I mean, today we had people talking about inputting master schedules into an AI chatbot, having it analyze to develop intervention schedules or maximize the collaboration time between a bilingual interventionist who has to intervene on the Spanish side when the Spanish is being taught, and figuring out, well, how can I get to every classroom at least once a week? Give me 5 options for a master schedule. Yeah. For anybody that's built a schedule, it can take days, if not weeks sometimes. But you can ask, yeah, you can draft it and give you 5 options. They might not all be feasible. There might be, examples that maybe don't embody the priorities or the values, but just to have that efficiency is huge. And so I think the more, because it's evolving so fast, the more that we can share knowledge with each other, and while we're using it, also embody that learning by doing process. Like, as long as we keep that an active process, it's going to have that power where we're not rescinding the value from the processes we know are really important.
Yeah. Jason, this has been an amazing conversation. I could sit and talk to you for another hour about this. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And it was a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Since 1998, Solution Tree has worked to transform education worldwide by empowering educators to raise student achievement. In pursuit of that mission, the PLC at Work Institutes are designed to bring educators together for 2.5 days of shared learning and collaboration. With a brand new 4th keynote, updated content, and dynamic breakout sessions, you'll gain advanced tools to refine your approach and make a bigger impact. To learn more about the full slate of PLC at Work Institutes and to register, navigate to www.solutiontree.com/events podcast.
I really appreciate you tuning into this episode in our Live from Seattle series. Make sure to navigate to solutiontree.com/podcast to listen to our other episodes, not just from Seattle, but our other live episodes as well. Subscribe today on your favorite app. Thanks again for joining me.